Hey Life Science, hope you're doing well. Here's our last video of 2020 online education, pandemic, Zoom, check-ins. Here we go. So like I told you before, I've been talking to you about plants. Your book doesn't discuss plants, but I wanted to give you a brief introduction on a very introductory level about plants to help you in ninth grade biology, where all of this, of course, is building to. And of course, I want you to do well in that class. So, plant processes and reproduction. What processes or processes, if you're from over the pond, enable plants to survive and reproduce? So, for example, do plants carry on cellular respiration? Well, of course, I'm not in class to ask you if you agree or disagree, but yes, they do. That's how they make ATP. Plants are not the only organisms that carry on photosynthesis. Uh, Phytoplankton make about like half of the oxygen on our world. So algae, bacteria, various other things. Plants produce hormones, which I talked to you about in our Zoom meeting. Hormones are chemical messengers. We'll talk about those. Plants can respond to their environment. That's true. Seeds contain tiny plant embryos. That's true. And flowers. But we won't be talking about, we already talked about those two things. So materials needed for plants. We already talked, let's review real quick. But xylem and phloem, vascular tissue in plants. Vascular tissue are like tubes inside of a plant, and it allows plants, it's an adaptation that's allowed for an advantage for angiosperms and vascular tracheophytes. And so xylem moves water, phloem moves food. But plants not only need water, and they also need to, of course, move those sugars around for photosynthesis, but they need to take carbon dioxide in. And they need to, of course, release and sometimes even absorb water vapor. And so how do they do that? Well, underneath plant leaves, a lot of plant leaves, there's stomata. And there's these little openings that are surrounded by guard cells right here that you can see. And they open and close, allowing plants to perform gas exchange. And so what is this important for? We've already talked about, but let me review it one more time. Photosynthesis, building, making, synthesizing with light. There's two different reactions that happens in the chloroplast. The light-dependent reaction takes water and splits it with light's energy, excites electrons to build ATP and NADPH, releases oxygen gas as a byproduct, which is awesome because cellular respiration needs oxygen gas. We need oxygen gas, of course. Those high-energy molecules, ATP and NADPH, are used to take CO2, which cannot be burned as fuel, and build sugars. And those sugars can be burned. I don't know if you've ever burned sugar like trying to make a glaze or cooking or something, but sugars have energy in them that can be burned. So we're trying to take something that has low energy, like hardly any energy within the bonds, and build something that has a lot of energy. And so you have to input energy to do that. And so ATP and NADPH does that for us. So where does photosynthesis happen? It happens inside a plant cell. You can see there's different layers: palisade mesophyll and spongy mesophyll. And so the two different types. Near the top of the surface, they're packed together. Palisade, P for packed. Spongy have open spaces which allow gases needed for photosynthesis to flow through them. Okay, so this is where we're at. Photosynthesis happens in leaves, of course, and this is kind of the anatomy of a leaf. And there's our vascular tissue, which can include xylem and phloem. Okay, and so here's just another summary of photosynthesis. Water, CO2 are the reactants. We use light as the energy source, and we're building sugars, which technically that's glucose, C6H12O6, and oxygen gas. We also release, which is a byproduct, photosynthesis. Okay. Now, cellular respiration is in your book, and very important. Cellular respiration is a series of chemical reactions that convert the energy in food molecules into a usable form of energy called ATP. We talked a lot about ATP this year, adenosine triphosphate. But cells need to have an energy source that they can use. When you do something in life, you usually have to spend money to do it. Buy groceries, pay your bills, pay your mortgage, eventually buy that latest game, whatever. You have to spend money. Well, when cells need to do something that requires energy, they use ATP for our purposes. So glucose molecules break down in cellular respiration. So there's three different types here. So briefly, I want to tell you where this happens in the mitochondrion. That's singular for mitochondria. Glycolysis is literally the breaking of sugar. So this happens in the cellular, the cytoplasm or the cytosol, the fluid outside the organelles. And so what happens is our goal is to make ATP. That's our goal, okay? And I'm going to summarize this because this is from a high school textbook. But let me summarize this for you. Basically, glucose is broken down to pyruvate. If oxygen is around, that's just a molecule. If oxygen is around, it goes inside the mitochondria, pyruvate does, into the Krebs cycle. Krebs cycle makes these molecules right here, NADH and FADH2. That goes into something called the electron transport chain. I'm not going to go into how that exactly works at a 7th grade introductory life science level, but all right now you need to know is that these molecules allow this electron transport chain to create a lot of ATP. So without oxygen, though, oxygen is necessary. So oxygen is needed for that pyruvate to go into the mitochondrium. If oxygen is not around, we do anaerobic respiration, and so therefore the pyruvate stays outside and it's fermentation. And us, lactic acid fermentation, which if you ever felt your muscles being sore, that's what's happened. So that is cellular respiration. So photosynthesis and cellular respiration are related. Very important slide here. You can see that the reactants of one, you can see here, reactants are the products of the other. So they are linked, especially in plants, because plants do both. I would pause this and kind of look over this slide. Of course, these slides will be on LMS, very important. So here's questions part one. Last questions asking through a video. Question part one. Number one, explain for me what is cellular respiration. Number two, how are photosynthesis and cellular respiration alike and how are they different? Compare and contrast cellular respiration and photosynthesis. Part two is when we'll talk about plant responses. We don't think about plants responding to the environment because they don't move like animals move, but plants do respond. This is a quality of life, being able to respond to stimulus or stimuli. And so what exactly is a stimuli? A stimuli is any change in an organism's environment. If you smell bacon cooking, that's a stimulus. You're going to start producing saliva, getting ready to eat. If it's hot outside, it's a stimulus. It's cold outside, if you feel heat, stimulus. Your body inside can create internal stimuli like increased blood pressure or various things like that. So plants respond to various stimulus. One example is light. They grow towards the light, of course. So stimulus causes a response. And so a tropism is a vocabulary where I want you to know, but tropism is a response that results in plant growth toward or away from a stimulus. So plants grow toward the light, but roots don't like the light, so they grow away from it. That's the shoot is like the stem. Shoots grow against gravity, but roots grow towards gravity. So again, these are examples of tropisms. When the growth is toward, it's called positive. When the growth is away, it's called negative. All right, so continuing on, phototropism involves the plant growing towards or away from light. Photo meaning light, of course. And so with that being said, that is phototropism. Well, skip this slide. All right, here. Thigmotropism is a response to touch. Plants respond to touch. Tendrils, you can look up really cool time-lapse videos about vines and tendrils and stuff. I showed a picture of Wrigley Field here. Of course, the vines growing on Wrigley Field is a hallmark of the friendly confines. But touch, thigmotropism. Now, would roots have positive or negative thigmotropism? Would they want, once they hit something, are they going to keep going that way, or are they going to go somewhere else? And hopefully you'll see that they will go they'll change direction and go somewhere else if they can't burrow through it, because they want to get nutrients for the plant. Gravitotropism or gravitropism. Stems grow away from gravity while roots grow towards it. Some of y'all feeling this, especially during the pandemic, right? Each morning gravity around the bed is 10 times strong. Can't get out of bed. It's crazy. Photoperiodism is a plant's response to the number of hours of darkness in its environment. So photoperiodism is literally plants can determine and can not only determine but respond to how much sunlight is in a day. For example, there's long day plants which flower when exposed to less than 10 to 12 hours of darkness, and then there's short day plants. So for example, here you can see long day plants would be like carnations. Short day plants, poinsettias, that's why we buy them around Christmas time. Doesn't matter, roses. Roses will grow long days, short days, it doesn't matter. Plants, like I already told you a little bit before, but plants make hormones like we do. So plant hormones are substances that act as chemical messengers. Chemical messengers. So during puberty, bodies change. Cells start changing how they're behaving. How is that? Well, DNA expression is changing. How is that? Because hormones cause a signaling cascade. Hormones are little chemical messengers, and when they bind to cells, they change how that cell is behaving. And so these chemical messengers change how cells behave in plants. So auxins is a hormone responsible for photoperiodism. So on the dark side of the plant stem, auxins will build up and cause those cells to elongate, thus helping the plant to grow toward the light. And here's a picture here to show you that. Auxism, even if the lights are above us, from the side, these cells becoming elongated, that causes the plant to curve. I'm sure some of you have heard, one bad apple spoils the rest, and tried, seeing a banana ripen over time. Well, what's happening here? Well, ethylene is also a hormone. Ethylene is a gas. You can't see or smell, but some fruit will produce ethylene as ripening begins. Apples and pears produce ethylene when ripening. Ethylene is responsible for the changes in texture, softening, color, and other processes involved in ripening in the fruit. Fruits and cherries and blueberries don't produce much ethylene influence their ripening. And so ethylene helps stimulate ripening of fruit. So here's question part 2. How do plants respond to the chemical stimuli or hormones, auxin and ethylene? Okay. Not only that, rapidly growing areas of a plant, such as roots and stems, produce gibberellins, which increase the rate of cell division. It's ramping up mitosis. So things are growing larger, longer. And then also root tips produce cytokinins. This is a hormone that increases the rate of cell division, and in some plants slows the aging process of flowers and fruits. Florists sometimes spray this on flowers to keep them, looking great for a long period of time. So why might fruit producers consider applying gibberellins to their plants? Again, this would not be organic. Organic does not use hormones, but it could possibly be, conventionally grown. And then I already kind of told you this, but how might cytokinins benefit a wholesale florist or a produce company? So humans make plants more productive by using plant hormones. Again, it's debatable if it's healthy or not. People are on both sides of that fence. Organic doesn't use hormones. Some crops now are easier to grow because humans understand how plants respond to hormones, which is good. I mean, if the choice is food or no food, you of course choose food. So question part 4, and here's our last question. Last video question. I want you to describe 2 tropisms plants show, and also research and discuss 2 plant hormones and what their role is inside of plants. What do they cause plants to do? How do plants respond to these hormones? Okay, guys, it's been crazy, it's been weird, but I hope you've learned through this semester. I hope you have a great summer if I don't see you. Remember, God created you. God loves you. Jesus wants to show you what life is, and by following him, you will know what life is. So I pray and hope that for each one of you. Until hopefully we see each other soon, God bless, and I hope you finish the semester out well.